Hello and welcome one all to yet another episode, or another look at an episode of Kamen Saber. This week we have the movie exclusive writer in Bacht, or what I guess his official pronunciation is now, Bato. It's like Bahto. Bato. I'm still gonna maybe call him Box just because I like the way that rolls off the tongue a bit better with the hard CHT at the end instead of Bato. I don't say Bato's a bad name. It just reminds me too much of Ghost in the Shell, and I don't think this show deserves that that room space of association with such a good show slash movie, depending on what version of Ghost in the Shell you're watching. Anyway, we have the return of the immortal swordsman, the Phoenix Swordsman, and the plot continues forward. So let's take a look at this episode of Saber. So our episode starts off with everyone celebrating Rio's return from the hospital after, that ass whooping Zubos gave him a few episodes ago. And now they are planning to try to reunite the whole group yet again. Toma is still reeling from last week's revelations that that Sophia is effectively a clone of Luna. Like, they don't really explain what she is properly, supposedly what she is, but she's kind of a clone. And Storios is also making his own clone for his own machinations, which we'll probably find out later. But anyway, he's reeling from that revelation, as well as the revelation that Luna is obviously alive because, they've been seeing her throughout the course of the entire series, sparingly though. He's been seeing visions of her. That Luna's alive and trapped in some kind of pocket dimension thing where she hasn't aged in like 15 years. Funny enough, she's able to recognize Toma even though she hasn't seen him in 15 years. But I'm guessing she's been like scrying to him this whole time so that she can see him. Or because, there was that whole moment where she told Toma to save the boy in the book that was Primitive Dragon. So maybe she has been able to see Toma this whole time, but she's just been stuck in her dimensional crack, or crack between dimensions, something like that, like a small rift. Anyway, Toma figures out that the way to save Luna is to get a reaction between his sword and the weird book that he has. It's not one of Sophia's books. I think this is one of the books Toma's just had around through the course of the whole series. So it might be actually Luna's book. The book that they're seeing reading from way back when they were kids. It might be. Anyway, that was how he says that's how to get a reaction that might open up the crack so that he can get Luna. And he's gonna ask Guri for help with that. Meanwhile, with the villain team, that's not the Megdo, Master Logos is unleashing the Book of Ruin and unsealing Box from it. If you remember, at the end of the movie, he was resealed back within the Book of Ruin, and Master Logos has that book and is unsealing Box. And basically, he tells his crew, like, hey, I'm going to unleash a hound to help us out. And Box is here, and Box is like, hey, give me back the Book of Ruin so I can return the world to the void, because that's his motivation. Max Logos is like, fuck that, I want to turn the world to the void and control all of reality. And Box kind of into that, / wants his book back, so he decides to follow Master Logos for right now. He also mentioned that Master Logos is very different from the previous Masters, which, obvious, because none of the other Masters wanted to become God. Spoiler for next week's episode, that's his motivation. But anyway, so he sets out Box, and Box is gonna wreck some shit because he's Box and he can't be killed because he's an immortal. But anyway, Toma and Yuri spar is pretty decent, and like nothing's happening, so he's a little disappointed. Then Box shows up in the middle of their spar and starts fighting them. Like, he has an immediate reaction to Yuri, and Yuri has an immediate reaction to him, and they have a pass together. And that pass is that they were once swordsmen, part of the same group, until one of their fellow swordsmen went nuts, overpowered, killed Box's family, and Box decided that, fuck all of humanity. Humans will just breed greed and destruction, so return the world to the void. he found the Sword of Nothingness. It's like the Sword of Null, but not Sword of Nothingness just sounds cooler. And we find out another thing the sword can do is just negate powers. So the sword is basically Toma from another index, his right hand. It just negate all powers when it comes to contact, allowing it to cut into not only Yuri, but also into emotional, elemental dragon. Emotional dragon's next week. Get into elemental dragon when Toma's doing his whole turn to the elements to get away from the attack thing. So overpowered power. I'm surprised it didn't really come up in the movie itself, though. The movie was just all about him spamming immortality. Or to be more accurate, he kept spamming Phoenix down. Anyway, they fight. Box is actually kind of winning this 2-on-1, and then Toma's sword reacts. It starts to glow, it responds to the book, opens up a crack, and Luna is on the other side. Reika's there watching the whole shit go down, I guess looking for an opportunity to steal people's shit again, because that's her whole thing. Box stops and mentions something that kind of annoys me, even though it was kind of ever-present, that Toma is the chosen one. And oh god, I'm getting Ghost flashbacks, because that kind of happened in Ghost, and we'll talk about that when we get to Ghost. But my god, do I hate the Chosen One narrative, especially when it feels this fucking lazy. Anyway, Bach fucks off. And where does he fuck off to? Well, at the same time where Toma's sparring with Yuri, Rentaro, I keep doing that, Daishinji, and Ryo are still trying to look for Ren. And they look in the same spot they did last time, which I honestly feel is kind of dumb, because he won't be there this time, because he was there last time. He's essentially a fucking cat. Unless you put food down for him, you're not going to find him there. Anyway, they get attacked by Durandal, who's wanting to kick, who wants to, beat on Rentaro in order to steal his books and sword. And, well, it's honestly pretty cool, because he does this whole Killer Queen thing, but Rentaro knows his shit by now, and knows that Durandal's going to go for an attack behind him. And so even though he knows, he uses an attack from his main hair to hit Durandal, which this makes Durandal mad, because anyone seeing through his tricks makes him mad. He should really just stop doing the whole let me skip time and get behind you thing, because now they know what the game is, and they have attacks that can hit them from behind. Maybe go for the side. Maybe learn a long-range attack. Just stop walking behind them to attack. Because they know what you're doing now, because you keep doing it. Anyway, that aside for Durandal's stupidity, it's a cool power. It was cool when JoJo's showed up, but I just feel that Durandal's not using it to the full effect. Anyway, Bach shows up and he attacks Durandal because he's like, fuck all swordsmen. All of them are my enemies because of the aforementioned backstory. I don't know why Rentaro doesn't leave. Like, he knows Bach is a threat, but he also knows he can't kill him. At least he should know from the movie. So I don't know why he just doesn't leave, especially because Bach's now distracted by Durandal. He could easily leave, go back to Swords of Logos, tell the group what's going on, and kick him with the plan. But no, he follows their fight. Durandal says there's nothing in it for him, because there really isn't. There really isn't anything in it for him for fighting Bach, because, technically Bach is under contract from Master Logos. He will eventually go back to Master Logos, so they'll have his sword and book when they need it. So there really is no reason for him to fight him. And, well, he just leaves. And then Box auto-targets onto Rentaro, who's still there. Rentaro does show an impressive display, kills him, but, Phoenix down, and Box immediately kicks his ass. Because fucking Phoenix powers. Everyone shows up, well, the ones who can fight show up, and, they have a discussion about friendship and all that kind of stuff, and Bog basically lays into Yuri a bit, like, oh, you believe in friends now? Where was that when you sealed me away all those years ago? Because, Yuri was the one who sealed Bog away originally, when he was just turning the wall to the void. But Yuri really doesn't have to come back to that. And then Kento shows up out of nowhere because he has a vision of the future and just says, "Hey, things are changing, but the end result's still the same. So seal your swords now, please." He fights them, and it's a 2-on-2 fight, and it's pretty cool. Yuri is trying to convince Kento that they should work together because they can just seal Bach away and stop his crazy plans. But Kento is still too edgy for that shit and says, "Fuck that noise." And then him and Bach use a finisher on Yuri, and this actually takes him out. He's knocked out, and he disappears. And then he's knocked out, and then Reika does her thing while everyone's distracted and steals his sword and books. Because that's her whole thing. And then she's like, "I wonder if Oni-chan will be happy with me now that I've stolen the Sword of Light." And so now Kento, for some reason, now Kento's on board with the whole let's get rid of Bach thing, because now he's fighting Bach. Like, I'm assuming he just wants to steal his sword and book too, but that would have been a lot easier with Yuri as backup instead of now without Yuri. So now they're fighting Bach, and it's pretty cool. Him and Toma fighting Bach. And then ultimately they change locations somehow to the riverbank again. And then Bach leaves because he's like, "Oh, she's here now, so I guess I can just leave." Because Toma's sword glows again and reacts to something. And then they turn around and Luna's back. So now Luna's back. And everything is going up Master Logos' grand scheme because, next week's previews. So, yeah. Yuri's out. They've lost another sword, meaning they still only have the 3 swordsmen. Kento's kind of acting stupid / as a wild card. And Bach's running around, so it's going to be 3-on-3 for the big fight next week, apparently. Hopefully someone can figure out a way to beat Reika and Durando's bullshittery. And I like how all of Master Logos' side has Reika turns into steam to avoid attacks. Durando skips time. Bach fucking immortal. Like, all of those swordsmen that are working, quote unquote, working for Master Logos right now have like bullshit spammable abilities that no one else in the series can really deal with too easily. And I kind of like that. It shows how fucking forced this man is, or at least how he's supposedly planning this out. But, that's the summary. Let's talk about final thoughts. So, overall, a part of me really likes this episode, if only for Bach's presence, because he's... Kento's supposed to be a bit of a wild card right now, but Bach is a way more wild card, who's literally attacking everyone and anyone that gets nearby him because, fuck all swordsmen. Again, I do like Bach from the movie, if only because his powers are pretty cool in the actor, so he was a highlight of that quote-unquote movie, even though his motivations were pretty bare. Now that we have a full explanation of his motivations, they're pretty generic and standard, but, they still work. It's still effective motivation. Like, my family died, fuck the whole world. But, I do like this kind of bitterness that's at least hinted at towards Yuri. Like, oh, now you believe in friendship. You didn't believe in that when you sealed me away all those years ago. Like, I kind of like that element. I do wish that was maybe more expounded upon, like he was targeting Yuri specifically a bit more, out of bitterness towards him for all what happened all those years ago. But, what we got works fine, too. I like this dynamic that the two have. I don't like Toma Chosen One. I don't like Chosen One Toma. Like, we're already getting hints of that earlier, to be fair. Everyone's saying Toma's destined for the great power, or the whole thing of Toma somehow singing to Skip's time without any real reason to. Like, there were hints of Toma being the Chosen One, but I just hoping there was not, like, his prophecy bullshit. But there is, apparently, and Toma's the Chosen One, and I don't know what that means in context. Like, does it mean he's chosen by Luna for something? Like, is it something where Luna can choose a champion and Toma's her specific champion? Like, what does it specifically mean? I'm having flashbacks to the thing with Ghost and how their main writer there just started developing random powers just randomly and at bullshit levels. It just made me dislike that series towards this endgame. And I have a feeling it's going to start disliking Saber a lot more towards this endgame. Like, again, Saber's a pretty mid-season for me. I like the suits. The fights are pretty cool because I honestly like me some good sword fighting. And, some of the concepts are interesting. even if they're also very, very stupid. But again, in terms of writer series, I have a higher standard for writer series because so many seasons are really good, and so for me, this season is pretty mid. Like, it started out pretty mid and didn't really raise any bars here or there. Like, take for example 01. 01 started out strong, started out really good. Week to week was a fucking blast. And then it started getting mid towards the middle. And honestly, towards the end, it kind of rose up again for me personally, towards its end game. And then we took that hiatus, and then its final endgame stretch honestly was pretty hyped for me on a personal level because I kind of like the concepts there. But, Saber, mid all the way through, and it might actually be lowering to lower mid because I'm never gonna really hate a writer series, like, unless you just feel like you're wasting my time, like maybe Agito and Ryuki. In Ryuki's case, it's because I have something better to compare it to in Dragon Knight. In Agito's case, it's just because I feel a lot of that series wastes my fucking time. And people say Fies does that, but no, Fies is a legitimate reason for that. I'm just not showing Fies bias. But anyway, overall, I do have to say, this episode was fine. One thing that irritates me towards the end is I feel like Kento, like, fighting against Bach, like fighting against Yuri towards the end, was just kind of forced in order to get rid of Yuri so that his sword can be stolen by Reika. Since he is a sword, he gets stolen. But it feels really forced because Yuri's like, hey, no, we can work together to seal away seal away Bach. He's like, fuck that, I'm sealing away everyone's sword. But wouldn't sealing away Bach also go along with your plans and make your plans ultimately easier? They're trying to get rid of the guy, Kento. You're supposed to be smart. At least I believe you're supposed to be smart. But either way, it just feels like it was forced in order to push Yuri out so that we can get Master Logos' big plan next week. So I'm not 100% on board with that. I do like that. I do find it funny that Durandal is getting more and more irritated as the series goes on because he uses the same trick in every fight. Skip time, get behind you. Skip time, get behind you. And, it's just he uses the same trick every time. He uses the same trick every time. It's, everyone's figuring out the game, and I kind of love that. Like, I kind of love that they're learning from the constant fights with this guy. It's pretty cool. But he still gets mad every time someone figures out his game. And I was like, oh, Bach, you're mad someone figured out your game? Maybe you should do something different in the next fight. I mean, not Bach, I mean Durandal. Bach's whole game is, oh, I died, Phoenix down, get behind you and use an attack. Because apparently everyone keeps forgetting, oh, this guy immortal. Despite how many times you fought him, you just forget immortal can't die. And he gets behind you and attacks you. Like, seriously, it seems like all these guys have the weakness of once you get behind them, they're basically fucked. And I'm just like, that's a really interesting pattern for fights in this series. But overall, I did like this. I like this episode better than last week's episode because last week's episode felt like, it honestly felt pretty fillery. But it was fine. I didn't like the Ren stuff that much. I liked the Zast, but here, no Ren, immediate plus in the episode. I don't like Toma's stuff too much. I honestly felt Rentaro held the idiot ball because he just didn't leave. It's like, Rentaro, why are you trying to fight him now? But, it was fine. It was stupid that he tried to fight him, but it was fine. Overall, this episode was fine. That's all I can really say. I'm happy that Box is here and he's showing a lot more personality than he did during the movie. I'm also happy for everyone else that, I'm happy that everyone else is moving the plot along. Although I do wish they would clarify the whole Sophia Luna thing. Maybe they will next week. And I just know I'm gonna hate Luna from here on because she's out now and she's still a child. And Sora's fine because he uses him very sporadically. His actor seems pretty decent. or at least his kid actor seems to be very natural. But I haven't liked Luna. Like, I haven't liked young Toma. I haven't liked Luna. I haven't liked young Kento. And Luna's still a child, so she's going to be a bigger part of the plot now. She's going to be around, and not only does that add another character to the series, it also means that we have a child actor that's going to be more prominent. And again, Kamen Rider from child actors is pretty hit and miss, and Luna might be a miss. Like, seriously, hearing her screech out Toma in every flashback got kind of annoying. So maybe that might be why I dislike her, at least so far. I really hope that next week's episode will turn that around, but I just can't imagine her screaming Toma at the top of her lungs again. I'm just like, oh god, this is the whole episode, isn't it? So, yeah. We are entering our final stretch. Not only is September a few weeks away, like 6 weeks away, no, more like 12 weeks away at this point, 12 plus weeks away, we are entering our final stretch of episodes. Rider typically has around 45 to 50 episodes. This is episode 35, so that means we either have 10 to 15 episodes left in the season. So, in this season, the rumors are coming out, and I'm not going to do any news videos or anything like that, so don't expect that from me. I will talk about the first impressions of, like, the official reveal when we get it for the next season, when we get that stuff out, just because I find the early series speculations pretty easily, as well as the hype for the early season stuff pretty interesting. Like, there was a lot of hype around Saber when it was first announced, like officially announced, and I honestly want to be part of that hype train, even if it's going to end up disappointing. I really hope the next season isn't disappointing. So yeah, I'll talk about that when we get to it, if anyone's even listening in at this point. So yeah, that's the episode. We're entering the final stretch. The next season's on its way. Hopefully that one will be better written, or at least have better characters and maybe less writers and less of a gimmick. Because my god, how many fucking drivers did this series have? Considering the fact that every sword is a driver. And with that, I'll see you all next week for the next episode. Hopefully, that one will be a bit better, considering it's at least part of someone's endgame.